stop the video.
All right. That was awesome. That's like an intro to an action movie. I love it. Oh,
Yeah. We decided we wanted to raise up the production value for this Legends of Lightning now.
you just raised the bar. I now insist
It's
on being
electrifying.
introduced with that type of drama every time.
It's electrifying,
Well,
isn't it?
last year is and Hannah, thank you so much for being at pretty much every single one of our tournaments since the beginning, since we had like Shock the Web and stuff. Really, really
We
appreciate
couldn't do it without you.
Yeah, I love being here. It's fun.
Um, thanks for the support from you, from Lightning Labs. It's always a pleasure to have you. But one of the reasons why we had to raise the bar a bit is because such amazing things happened in the last Legend of Lightning. You know, we had like some amazing projects, open source, and also startups being formed from the tournament. So yeah, we're gonna at some point, do some report or some stats and stuff on some of those amazing achievements of the makers. But a lot of that is due to some of the educational efforts that we put on there. So that's a layup and thanks to you again.
No, that's why I'm here, because y'all are making some awesome stuff happen. So I'm happy to support that however I can. Yeah.
And just so you know, this year we have 164 makers and 31 projects already in the platform. So
That's
this is
awesome.
super happening and very active, and we're really, really blessed to have the support of Folga Virtues for this to happen. So thank you for joining us. We wanted to ask you, if possible, tell us about yourself. Like, how did you get into this? What do you do work-wise, and how did you become a developer advocate?
Yeah. It's well, I mean, there's a long and involved story, but there's a number of different ways in which that happened. I was an econ nerd for a long time, studied economics at UIC in Chicago, and then, started reading Murray Rothbard books, like just like fell down the rabbit hole of how money works and studying economics. And then it's actually one of my favorite podcasts, econtalk.org, had an episode about Bitcoin back in 2011. And it was actually driving to work one day, listening to that on a burnt CD, because it was a while ago. And this was also, I was living out in the countryside in Australia, so I was a little lagging with the tech adoption there. But listening to this podcast, and as most people do when they come across new stuff, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, right? This is rubbish. Listened to it for about 15 minutes and just turned it off and totally dismissed it, right? Bitcoin is nonsense, magic internet money backed by nothing. But it sort of persisted. And because I had such an interest in, economics and monetary theory and alternative currencies, like this Bitcoin thing just kept popping up, And so finally, I sat down and really dug into it a bit. And, there wasn't a lot of stuff online at that time. There was the white paper and, a few crazy people making YouTube videos and, the forums at the time. And once I realized sort of the decentralized nature of it, I fell in love, because that was really what makes it unique and different from all the other things out there. And so then I just fell right down the rabbit hole, and that was about 11 years ago now, and I've been here ever since. So yeah.
11 years ago. Damn, that's crazy. Well, 11 years later, we're still some crazy people on YouTube making videos.
Still crazy people on YouTube. Yes, it's still what's happening.
Now at least they're electrifying, right?
Yes, now we get fabulous intros and there's some organization happening here. Yes.
Mm. All right. Well, without further ado, your talk here is going to basically break down the architecture of the Lightning Network, the various components of it. The reason why this is important for you guys out there who are listening or doing the playback is that there's a lot of like mystery behind like what's kind of like in a node. You know that some of the components of like, oh, you need to have a channel and you need to have a server running, but there's some other parts that make this whole network kind of form and function. So Hannah's going to be breaking it down today with us, and I will give you the stage.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So the goal here is to prep people to build with Lightning, right? To work with Lightning and to build with Lightning. So we're kind of starting with, some of the basics, right? So we're kind of starting with an overview like, okay, why is Lightning exist in the first place? Why was it built? What advantages does it have? We're going to cover very briefly just the basic concepts of channels and routing. Then we're going to go into some questions that you might have about Lightning or how it works, nodes, all sorts of questions along those lines. Then towards the end of it, we'll see, I've got a lot of slides, so we'll just see what we get through and where the questions take us. But then towards the end of the slide deck, I have a whole bunch of stuff on working with LND specifically, so the different APIs that you can work with. And then if we have time, we'll use Lightning Polar to do a bit of a demo and show you how you can spin up a local network to practice working with it. And we'll use a Python script to talk to one of the LND nodes just to get you an idea of how you can, write some code, write a program that talks to an LND node. So that's like the full story arc, and we're just kind of that I have planned in the slide deck, and we'll just kind of see what we get to and where this chat takes us. Please do ask lots and lots of questions, any questions you may have as you have them, so that we can, this is for you, for someone who's, attempting to work with or build with Lightning. So I'm here to, not just talk to a computer screen in front of me, but to answer any questions you might have. So with all of that, let's start with the slide deck. Oh, hold on. Do I need to click over here? There we go. All right. So my name's Hannah Rosenberg. I am working as a developer advocate at Lightning Labs. This means it's my job to help you work with this technology. So please do ping me on all the various places if you have questions, right? I'm on Twitter, I'm on Nostr, of course. Also, there's a Slack. If you want to work with LND and you're having questions about LND, you can go to the lightning.engineering website, and at the bottom, there's a little link that'll take you to our Slack. And then I told you all a little bit about myself and how I got into this and what I've been doing in this space. But of course, with 11 years, there's a lot of different things I've done. So if you're curious about any of it, a good amount of it is up on LinkedIn there. So you can get my full, or like 60% of my Bitcoin resume is up on LinkedIn. All right, so that's about me. Again, what we'll cover is sort of why Lightning channels, routing, characteristics of Lightning, some use cases and examples, and then working with LND and some of the features that LND offers. So I've made some just very broad assumptions about you for this presentation. I'm assuming you know the basics of Bitcoin, right? That's basically all I'm assuming here. If there are things that you're hoping to get out of this session and that you'd like to learn, or specific questions that you have, please let me know. I think you can type that in the chat. We'll as much as we can, we'll adapt this presentation to the people that are here with us today and can ask the questions. All right, so let's start right at the beginning. Again, this first part we'll kind of go through pretty quickly because this is sort of, 101, Lightning 101. And if you have questions as we're going through, this bit of a review, please do let us know. So if you haven't been, in this space for 11 years, right, then you might not know the whole backstory of how Lightning came to be. And of course, it's came about as a scaling solution for Bitcoin, right? Because the Bitcoin network itself, the beauty of it, as I was mentioned earlier, is its decentralization. This is what makes it unique. This is what makes it so resilient. This is really the beautiful, unique, interesting part about Bitcoin, but it comes with some problems, right? Here's a video on Bitcoin consensus I threw in the slide deck in case anyone is not up to speed on that. Hopefully this video would help. All right. So the constraint of the Bitcoin network is that everyone needs to know about everything, right? This is entirely necessary to the decentralization of the network. We love this. We have to keep this. It's very, very important to protect this, but it comes with some constraints, right? So I live in Puerto Rico these days. If I were to walk down to a local cafe and buy a cup of tea using Bitcoin on chain, everyone in the world, every Bitcoin node in the world needs to know about that transaction. It has to go get broadcast to all the nodes in the world, has to go through a validation process, it has to get mined, etc. Right? Everyone needs to know about everything. Beautiful, but has some limitations, right? So here's a graphic representation of the Bitcoin network. In fact, there'd be, like a good 10,000 of these, but that doesn't fit so nicely on a screen. So all of these computers need to know about my buying tea this morning, right? And for a cup of tea, you could argue maybe this is inefficient, right? Is there a better way we can do this? So also we have constraints with just transactions per second. If anyone was around during 2016, 2017, when there was so much debate about how to scale the network, this was one thing that was talked about a lot and still is talked about a lot. It's like transactions per second. And these numbers, you can argue about them, but very roughly, we could say Bitcoin does 7 transactions per second, while something like Visa could do 16,000 transactions per second. Again, rough numbers just to give you an idea of the scale of sort of the issue. So how do we take this beautiful decentralized system, but make it so we can do a lot more on it, right? But it's also important to think about, for me personally, I think about 3 different ways in which, the network is stressed by a lot of transactions, right? So there's limited space in a block. If everyone's, if we have everyone or, millions or a billion people around the world trying to buy their morning cup of tea using Bitcoin on chain, they're all going to be fighting for space in a block, right? And you're going to get the blockchain data is going to grow very rapidly. So you're fighting for limited space in the block. It causes blockchain bloat. And then, of course, fighting for limited space in a block causes fees to go way up, which can be a problem. It could mean that the fee you're paying to buy that cup of tea is more than the cup of tea. And then the blockchain, the space in the data in the blockchain can get very big. And then you just actually have the physical limitations. We're so used to the internet being so fast, but there actually are limitations on how quickly in how much data you can send from one side of the world to the other, right? So these are issues with, scaling a blockchain. So what do we do about it? We have Lightning. Of course, there are all kinds of, different solutions that people have come up with and different types of second layers, but I'd argue that this one is the best and the most successful, which is why we're here. And so the idea here is just to scale in layers, right? So we have that, on-chain layer, and then we have a layer above that. So let's talk a little bit about how this improves the situation. Well, it allows for scaling, right? So we can do increased transactions per second. We'll talk exactly about how this works in just a moment. It reduces blockchain bloat. It reduces the amount of data that has to be transmitted globally. Also, you can do this with very, very low fees, which enables microtransactions, and you have increased privacy because Lightning transactions are not recorded on the blockchain, right? So these are all these advantages to Lightning. And then we get into, okay, well, that sounds great. How the heck do you make that happen, right? And again, this is Lightning 101, so we're going to go through it pretty quickly, just a bit of a review. So Technically, so we're going to talk about two concepts here. The first is channels, and then the second is routing. But the big idea that I hope we take away from this is the idea that we're going from global knowledge, where everyone needs to know about everything, to a situation where we can have much more local knowledge. Only certain people know to know about certain things. And this is what really enables the scaling, right? All of the benefits that we just discussed. So the first concept here is a channel, and from a technical perspective, as it currently works on the Lightning Network, this is a 2 of 2 multi-sig address, right? But from a less technical perspective, you can just kind of imagine this picture here. We have that blockchain in the background, and then we have two keys, and we'll go with our, tried and true crypto characters, Alice and Bob. Alice has one key, Bob has one key. In this situation, we're imagining that Alice is funding the channel. So Alice puts some funds into this multi-sig address. She locks some funds into the channel, such that the only way to move those funds is if both her and Bob sign off on that transaction using her key. So we imagine that Alice loves a morning cup of tea. She wants to buy her morning cup of tea using Bitcoin. Bob has a cafe. She shows up to Bob's cafe. She says, hey, Bob, I want to buy this tea from you using Bitcoin. I don't want to do it on chain. Maybe the fees are too high or something of that variety, right? I want to do it on Lightning. I am going to open a Lightning channel with you. And I'll say, let's put 400,000 Satoshis. Let's just go with 100,000 Satoshis, right? I'm going to put 100,000 Satoshis into this Lightning channel with you. And at the beginning of, the Lightning channel, all the funds are on my side. All the money in that channel belongs to Alice, right? But as she goes in every day, she sort of updates her balance with Bob and says, I'm going to sign a transaction saying some of these funds actually belong to you. We're not going to broadcast it on the main blockchain, although at any point we could, either one of us could. But I'm just going to write this check to you, write you this little note that says, hey, some of the funds in this channel now belong to you. And in exchange, you're going to give me that cup of tea I'm looking for, right? And here is a bit of a visualization of how this works. We can imagine starting off here that all the Satoshis, right, all the Bitcoin are on Alice's side. And as she comes in the morning and gets that cup of tea, she writes, a transaction, or her wallet will do it for her, which then says, hey, Bob, you actually get some of these funds too. And so she sort of pushes some funds, some Satoshis over to Bob's side of the channel. So that's kind of what that looks like, right? Very roughly. So we kind of see, let's go to the next slide. So it's kind of like what the channel looks like on Monday morning. And then after a week of her buying, tea from Bob's cafe, this is sort of the state of the channel. Now some of those funds belong to Bob. Should Alice move out of town, should Bob close his cafe, whatever the situation may be, at any point, either one of them can close this channel, and that's the division of funds that they get. So that's the concept of a channel. Let me know if you have any questions about that, but we're going to roll right into routing so we can finish our Lightning 101 here. So now we imagine that Alice is out on a business trip. She is no longer in Puerto Rico. She's in Austin, Texas, at a conference, right? And she's trying to buy some tea, this time from Charlie's Cafe. She does not have a channel open with Charlie. She doesn't want to open a channel with Charlie because who knows when she's going to go back to Austin, Texas. It'll probably be a couple of years before she's back there, right? So instead, she routes her payment through the Lightning Network to Charlie. In reality, there might be, 3, 4 different people involved in this routing process. But for simplicity, we're going to imagine simply that Alice has a channel with Bob and Bob has a channel with Charlie. So Alice, or more accurately, her wallet will say, hey, Bob, I'm going to send you some funds. Can you forward this on to Charlie? And then Charlie receives those funds and Alice gets her tea. Right, so let's have a look at what this looks like in a bit of an animation here. So Alice sends funds to Bob. Bob sends funds to Charlie. Cool, right? That's kind of what that looks like. Of course, there's lots of very sophisticated Bitcoin scripts involved in all of this, and HDLCs and the whole lot. That means that Bob can't run off with the money. No one can cheat anyone, et cetera, et cetera. But for simplicity, we'll look at that one more time. This is kind of what this routing process looks like. You can note here that Bob starts off with sort of, 2 of these Bitcoins. That wouldn't actually be 2 Bitcoin, let's say, some Satoshis. But Bob here has 2, right? And if you look after Bob still has 2, they're just distributed slightly differently across his channels. So that's important to note. And it was helpful for me understanding the Lightning Network to get that as Bob's routing, his total balance doesn't change. It just changes like how it's distributed between channels. And of course, for his effort, Bob does earn a very small fee. Cool, let's move along. Okay, and then here's kind of a visualization of how we can imagine this. This is the Lightning Network, all these different nodes talking to each other. This might be Alice over here, here's Bob, and here's Charlie. Or maybe this is Charlie, right? Whatever the case may be, or Charlie's all the way over here, and Alice has got to send her payment all the way this way. But this is just a visualization of how you can imagine the Lightning Network sort of as a layer above the Bitcoin network. So before we get into specific questions about nodes and how this all works, do you all have any questions? If there are any questions, let me know, because that is our brief Lightning 101. And now we'll dive into, we have a list of questions here, which we have anticipated some of you may have. And so I will read through those and answer them. And please do let me know if we have any additional questions as we go through this. All right, so some common questions we may get at this point. Who needs a node? All right, so let's go back and look here. All these little dots on the Lightning Network, this is a node. And we showed that graphic earlier of sort of the Bitcoin network and all those little computers on the network. Of course, a node is just a fancy word for a computer connected to this network, right? So who needs a node? Technically speaking, if you're involved, if you're, have a non-custodial wallet, right? If you're holding your own keys, you're holding your own funds, and you're interacting on the Lightning Network, like you have a node. So sort of from a technical perspective, we say everyone on the Lightning Network has a node, needs a node, right? But I think a lot of times when we talk about nodes, we talk about node management, and we're talking more about routing nodes, and we'll talk about that more in a second too. So you definitely need a node, but what you need really is an identity, right? Sort of like an address on the Lightning Network where people can find you such that they can send you funds. So this, technically speaking, is a node, but you don't have to be a node manager. You don't have to be managing a routing node to be on the Lightning network. You could have just a wallet that you download on your mobile phone, which is technically speaking a node, but does not require you to be a Lightning node expert. All right, who needs a channel? This is the same sort of answer where everyone needs a channel. If you want to be connected on the Lightning Network and interacting with other people, you need at least one channel. You may have some more, kind of depending on your setup. You may have a wallet that sets up for you a channel with sort of their big node, which then connects you to the rest of the network, right? But everyone needs at least one channel. If you're thinking about building something and your users, you say, oh, my user needs a node and my user needs a channel. Yes, this is accurate, especially if it's non-custodial, if you're not holding their funds for them. But your user does not need to be a Lightning node expert. Your user does not need to know about the channel. There are ways to sort of hide these things and manage it on the back end. So, all right, how do you manage a node? So there's another question here. What are the different types of nodes, right? So again, we talked about you can have a very simple node, which just runs on your mobile phone. So your user, of something you're developing may have a node, but they don't really need to know that much about it. But you, as the service provider, right, you might need to have a big, well-connected, well-maintained routing node. So essentially, think of it as like different types of nodes. Is it like a user node, or is it a routing node? If someone just has a user node, hopefully whatever software they're using is sort of managing that for them, right? They don't need to think about it much. They don't need to do much. If you have a routing node, you need to pay attention to that, right? You need to sort of manage that node. And there's all kinds of automations you can set up and tools you can use, and we'll walk through some of that. But if you've got a routing node, if you're a service provider, you will need to put some time and effort and think through how you're going to manage that node. All right, is running a node profitable? So people ask, can you run a routing node and have this make money the way you might think I'm going to run a Bitcoin mining node and have this make money? The short answer there, I would say, is probably no. You absolutely can make some money with a routing node if you're someone who really knows what they're doing, right? So if you're like, Alex Bosworth, right? I'm sure could is running some really amazing nodes, right? But generally speaking, people set up a node and run big nodes as it's a part of their business. Now you absolutely can, right? People do set up nodes and have these big routing nodes with the intention of making money off the fees that they collect for routing money through that node. Like if you're Bob in our example and Alice is using your node to send funds through to Charlie, you get a tiny, tiny little fee, right? And so if you're doing that on a big scale, you can make money. People absolutely do that. But I would say most people wind up setting up a node for other reasons. They want to be connected to the network, or they have a service in which they're providing, which requires them to have a node. So running a profitable routing node is a specialized skill, right? All right, we talked about different types of nodes. Essentially, I'm just calling them like a user node and a routing node, right? As someone with a mobile wallet would just have a user node. A service provider might have a routing node, right? All right, cool. So also, if you want to review some of these concepts, there's this video up on YouTube, which will walk you through them. Again, you can come back and look at that if any of these concepts are fuzzy. So before we move on, let me know if there are any questions. Hopefully that list of questions just cleared that up. So now we are done with our Lightning 101, our brief Lightning review. And now we can really dig into some of the fun stuff here, which is talking about what are the characteristics of Lightning, what makes this network so cool, and why is it so interesting and fun to build on top of it, right? What does this enable for us? So let's get into that. Things that are true of Lightning. These are real Bitcoin transactions, right? When Alice, goes into Bob's cafe and creates a Lightning transaction with him, that's a real Bitcoin transaction that if Bob wanted to, he could take and just broadcast to the main chain, right? He probably won't do that because he wants to keep that channel open with Alice. And that allows them to interact with very, very low fees. Bob doesn't really want to have to pay on-chain fees if it's not necessary to do so. So Bob probably isn't going to do that, but at any time he could, because that's real Bitcoin. So very important to understand that. All right, all of this is built on free open source software. So Bitcoin and Lightning, all free open source software, just these peer-to-peer networks. It's really amazing how this works. It's a thing of beauty. It's all open and free. The Lightning network is a decentralized network, right? We have the same, open, borderless, permissionless, anyone in the world with, an internet connection and a computer and some sort of interest in it can download the software and run it and become a part of these networks. All right, no barriers to entry, right? Anyone in the world with a computer and an internet connection can be a part of this. All right, so it is indeed Bitcoin, but it's faster, right? So if you're broadcasting something on chain, on average, it's going to take you about 10 minutes for that to be sort of confirmed, right? To get a confirmation on the Bitcoin network. With Lightning, it is, of course, lightning fast, right? You can kind of expect a Lightning transaction to go through roughly as quickly as you would expect a text message to go from you to a friend, right? It's cheaper, right? Because we don't have to have everyone know about everything and we don't have to go through the mining process. It's much less resource intensive and it's much, much cheaper because the computational power required is about, roughly the same as like sending an encrypted message, to a friend, roughly, right? All right. And it's more private, right? Lightning is not a privacy coin, right? But you don't have to have your transaction broadcast to the entire global network and recorded on the blockchain. So it has some privacy enhancements. All right, cool. So that's some of the really cool features of Lightning. And let's talk a bit about where the Lightning network is today. So some stats, some statistics. This, I think, is actually this slide I might have put together a few weeks back. It might be up to 18,000 at the moment. I'm not sure, but to give you a rough idea, right? So let's say 16,000 about nodes, about close to 70,000 channels. The value, right, looking about 5,000 Bitcoin. This is what we're aware of, right? This is what is publicly broadcast. You can have private channels, and you can have, more private nodes, etc. But this is what's on the public graph of the network as of whenever I put the slide deck together, maybe a couple weeks or a month ago. So here's a good report that just came out, I think about a week ago, that really digs into what's happening on the Lightning Network now, and really some really interesting data. There's been just a dramatic increase in the usage of Lightning over the past couple of years. So it's been really, really cool to watch. You can read that report, which really digs into it in much more depth than I'm going to be able to do so here. All right. So now what can we do with the Lightning Network, unless we have any questions? Let me know if we have any questions. But we'll talk about what we can do with the Lightning Network. Fun stuff, Poyo feed, which has been down, which upsets me because it was so fun, right? It's a very silly example, but it's just this website where you can go and pay a Lightning invoice, and there's this live stream of these chickens, and when you pay a Lightning invoice, this little feeder drops down and gives the chickens some food, which is really fun. And it's a very, very silly example, but it shows the power of this network, because anyone in the world without a credit card, right, without needing to sign up for an account for this website, anyone in the world can just click a button, get a Lightning invoice. If you got a mobile wallet, you can just pay it, boom, and then you can feed the chickens, right? And it's sort of a silly, fun thing to do, but it shows the how open and borderless this technology is. Anyone in the world can do that without needing an account of any variety. So it really it's fun, and it demonstrates the power of the network. All right. Some other use cases, right? Podcasting 2.0. The idea is you can stream someone Satoshis while you're listening to their podcast, or they can pay you to listen to their podcast. Really fun stuff there. Paywalls. So the idea being is you might want to read an article that your friend sent you, but you don't want a year-long subscription to the New York Times, right? You just want to read the one article. That's a very common one. So maybe you could pay 5 cents to do that, right? And this is, you can't, for a variety of reasons, more business and economic than technical, you just can't do that with credit cards, right? So something like Lightning is necessary to make that happen. There's all sorts of applications out there using Lightning as rewards for all kinds of things, because you can send just these tiny little rewards for different activities or things that people have done. Again, these are these micro payments that you're not going to do this with a credit card, right? Streaming services, so maybe a VPN, which you could pay as you're using it. I hope in the future we'll get things like Netflix, where I can just pay as I'm watching a show instead of paying for, a subscription for 3 months where I'm not even using it, and then 1 month I'm binge watching, right? Like if I could just pay for when I'm watching it, that would be so cool. Again, something that you can't really do with credit cards, you absolutely can do with Lightning. So really, really cool stuff. So with Lightning, you can do these streaming things and these micro payment things, but you can also do things without having to have subscriptions, right? Which some businesses may not like so much, but consumers really do love. All right, gaming. There's all kinds of fun games out there. There's a business called Thunder Games that makes this fun game called Bitcoin Bounce, which is this, silly little mobile game that my husband is jokingly but half seriously, I think, trying to get our kids really good at so they can earn us Satoshis while they're playing games. Because you can actually
I play the solitaire, so I get it.
yeah, but no, he's all the time, like we're sitting at at a restaurant and they're bored, he's like, earn us some Satoshis, play Bitcoin Bounce. So this is really, and then my kids are a bit of gamers, and they like to go and build all kinds of crazy stuff in these different like Roblox games and such, and I'm just like waiting for all these things. If only they were Lightning enabled, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have to give them an allowance every month. Like they would just go earn some money in these games. So we're still slightly too early for that, except for Bitcoin Bounce. We're earning some Satoshis
Child labor,
there.
go Hannah.
Child labor, yes. So all kinds of really, really cool stuff you can do with this. And here's a couple of examples for things we're working at it on Lightning Labs. We had some cool programs or libraries that were written to sort of make an AI bot Bitcoin enabled, and I got to make a demo for that, which was so much fun. So I could make my AI bot then go out and buy things for me online, which was just like a sci-fi nerd. This was just like too much fun. I had
Yeah, we
so
had
much
the
fun
AI
with that.
hackathon too, and so we had a couple of examples of that sort of work with yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, it's fun. And again, something that really is so much better on Lightning than with credit cards, because then anyone in the world without having to have an account can just go and buy things or buy access to services, and you can get your AI bots. You can have an AI bot go buy things for you using Lightning, or you can sell things to
We were
AI
orange
bots.
pilling Replit people. Yeah.
Yes, excellent. And on Replit, I do have a template that I made during the demo that you can go look at too, which is really
Very
fun.
cool.
And then Taproot Assets, another really amazing project that's come out of Lightning Labs, where you can do assets. And then the really cool thing about that is you can do assets that are then exchangeable on the Lightning Network if you have fungible assets, which is really, really interesting. And that's all rolling along. And then that QR code there is for this website, lightning-landscape.net, which will show you just all kinds of businesses and services that are available and working on the Lightning Network, to give you a good idea of what's going on there. All right, so we got about 15 minutes left, and we can now dive into working with LND specifically. Now, there are a number of different implementations of the Lightning Network. There's like LND, the Lightning Network Daemon. There's Core Lightning. There's LDK. There's all kinds of different implementations of this, but we're going to be focusing on this one right now. And Maria, do we have any questions, or should I keep rolling here?
I have like 5 of them.
Well, ask questions. Yes.
So first of all, I've seen a couple of very prominent people in the space that kind of say that Lightning has challenges with obviously the centralization, right? And like, how are we working towards making sure that it is as decentralized as possible, that not a few nodes have all the power, that we're distributing this? And for example, like I remember with Amazon Web Services, like all the nodes were on Amazon, so we didn't really know if it was in El Salvador or in Mexico or where the node was. Like part of that feeling of a decentralized network is that you can see it on the map somehow, but there are, like, if you use it on the cloud, or like, what are the differences in that? And then number 2, what is the minimum you have to spend to have a node that's working, and what is the most efficient, like cost wise, for somebody who's really going to be using it and managing channels and that sort of thing? So those are 2 distinctions that I'd love for you to make, if possible.
Okay. Yep, definitely. First, let's talk about the decentralization question. All right. So with Bitcoin, we can kind of think of it as just all these different nodes all around the world talking to each other. And this is very sort of like flat structure. And of course, that's not entirely accurate, because then you have some nodes that are mining nodes, and you might have mining pools, and there's some concerns about centralization there. But of course, decentralization is like the magic of Bitcoin. Like, this is the secret ingredient, right? This is the magic sauce of Bitcoin, is decentralization. So it's very, very important, and we think a lot about that and make sure that we maintain it. So some people have concerns about Lightning. So I bring up this graphic here, and you say, okay, there might be this node right here, right, which only has these 2 connections, but we might have some nodes that have this centralizing force to them, right? So here's this one, and they have all these different connections, and this is kind of this centralizing thing. And I think this is what we do see now, and we'll probably continue to see, that there are some nodes that like have like, more gravity to them, right? So things more central in the network and have more connections. I do not lose sleep over this, and I do not worry about this, because the big question for me is, how easy is it to switch, right? How much power or control on the network does this particular node have, right? You worry a lot about centralization because it becomes a central point of failure, or it becomes a central point of censorship, right? So we worry about fragility or censorship is like the big things that I think about when I'm worrying about centralization, right? We worry about centralization of mining pools because you worry about censorship of certain transactions, right? Someone that can control that, can decide what can and can't go through. It's a lot more complicated that and how that would work, but that's a little off topic for here. But that's what I worry. What I think about is there control? Is there a central point of failure? Is it like one major node which everything has to go through there or your payment can't go through? Like if that were true, that would be a problem. That is not true. I do not think that will be true. I think when you have a robust network, you might have some nodes that are pretty big, but when you have a lot of things going on, a robust network, like much more robust than this. This is a very, very simplified graphic, but there's some websites out there that will give you a visualization of the Lightning Network, and it's just, there's so much going on. Yeah, it's really beautiful to watch that evolve, and I don't think we are at a point or we'll get to a point where there's a node that's so big that if they don't accept your transaction, it won't go through, right? So I don't think we're going to have that central point of failure. I also think we're not going to have that central point of censorship, right? Because I think as long as you have a very robust network, you have options. As long as you have options, you can't have a central point of like that central point of failure, and you can't have that central point of censorship. If there's some big node that wants to censor your transactions and your transactions never go through, your Lightning node's very quickly going to realize, oh, all my transactions fail when I try to send them on that route. I'm just going to send it on a different route. Right. So as long as we have that, as long as we don't have any one particular node that can crash the network or any one particular node that can censor things on the network, then I think we've successfully maintained enough decentralization to make it function. I do believe that is the case and will continue to be the case. So I don't lose sleep over that one. But it's a real concern and something that we definitely should keep an eye on to make sure it stays that way. All right, so the next question is cost of running a node. So we're going to talk here about, well, I've got this open I've got a number of different tabs open. I got to enable the JavaScript on all of these. Okay, hold on. Where did we go? Okay, here we are. This is Lightning terminal on the web. So let's imagine you want to run a routing node, right? You want to have a proper node that's providing services to people that's maybe using your system, right? You would want to have that on a good server, right? AWS is an option. I like things, smaller things like Linode. You got to be careful on AWS. It can be a central point of failure. I worry there because there's so much that runs on AWS. And then also you got to really be careful. They will wind up charging you so much money on accidents. It's happened to me where I got a surprise bill for like $1,500, right?
Oh my God.
Be careful.
Wait, so Linode, can you type the things that you're recommending just so we have the correct names as well?
Yeah. Linode, Linode, I think is what it is. But that's one that I use. There's all kinds of these out there.
Yes.
But you have to have a server, and if you want a full archival node, so you want to have a complete copy of the Bitcoin blockchain, then you have to have enough storage space on the Linode. So then you have to pay more for that. So you can run these as cheap as I have some testnet nodes where I have a prune node running on a Linode for like $15 a month or something. But if you're going to have a big routing node, you're probably paying, much more than that, $100 and maybe more a month if you're going to do a proper AWS setup. And you've got, all kinds of, AWS has a lot of features. You can do all kinds of different interesting backup things, etc. So you could pay $100, $200 a month for this stuff, depending on the sophistication of your setup. You can have node clusters where you have one main node and then sort of, you can think of it maybe as like child nodes around it, manage different things. So you can really get very sophisticated with it, but that you would only do that if you had a really big service that you were running. So in this scenario, you would imagine that you have a very popular service that's making lots of money. So this is very worth it for the cost, right? Then we have things like Terminal, which really can help you a ton in managing a node. So if you're more of a hobbyist or have a smaller service and you're just got some Linode running, and you want to manage your node, then this we'll talk about when we get to tools a bit. Here is where you can, it's trying to get me to connect, and I'm not going to do that right now. But you can go to loop to, buy channel, or no, pools where you buy channels. Loop is where you manage the liquidity in the channels. There's all kinds of different things you can connect to. Using terminal is free. You do pay a fee when you use a service like Loop or Pool, but you can set this up and look at your node and enable auto fees and all kinds of stuff. So there's quite a lot. We've come a long way where there's really a ton of tools out there for managing a node and doing so pretty user friendly. Like, look at this nice user interface, and I can click on all this stuff and try and open a channel, see all kinds of really cool stuff that you can do from this very nice UI, which means it's much. I'm a nerd. I just prefer to do it on the command line anyhow. But for people who don't want to do it on the command line, this is a great way to do it. Cool.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. So, and then did I see a question pop up while we were chatting there?
Well, they were actually agreeing with you that the Amazon services can be a real issue, and you should play with it, but use something else whenever possible. And also Voltage Cloud potentially, and DigitalOcean
is a great one. You can spin up a Lightning node, and they'll do tons of management stuff for you and give you access to do all the management yourself if you wanted to. And I agree, AWS has a ton of all kinds of functionality, but generally I opt for something else when it makes sense to do so.
Because of the surprise charges.
For two reasons. One, because you don't want everything in the world run by AWS. That's a little scary.
That's our fight against decentralization.
Yes. You do have to keep that in mind, right? I do not like centralizations of power in anything, right? Jeff Bezos is doing well enough. He's fine. But also it's, that I have gotten surprise bills from AWS. And part of that is just I'm not an AWS whiz. So if you just push the wrong button on accident, so now, when you're working on big professional builds, hire an AWS whiz, so you don't do that and accidentally, there goes your vacation for an AWS bill. But yep.
Okay.
All right. So now we're going to talk a bit specifically. We got a little bit more time diving into the specifics of working with LND. So this is LND, the Lightning Network Daemon. And of course, again, this is free and open source software. It's available here on GitHub. You can go clone it, fork it, whatever you like. It's free open source software. It's written in Golang. So if you wanted to, I think it's important to distinguish between a Lightning application developer and a Lightning protocol developer. What we're talking about here is stuff for Lightning application developers. If you wanted to be a protocol developer and you wanted to contribute to LND, you might want to become a Golang whiz. That would be really helpful. And of course, this one is built by Lightning Labs. So it's the developers at Lightning Labs that build it. Of course, there's huge contribution from the community, so it's a collaborative effort. But there's a lot of funding coming from Lightning Labs to build LND. All right. Now, when we work with this, let's go here. I think I have these docs open. LND has the command line interface, and it has a REST and gRPC APIs. So here we go. This is it. This is the API docs, lightning.engineering/API-docs/API/LND. All right. And here we can see all of the different ways in which we can work with LND via these APIs. So let's do invoice services, and let's look up an invoice, right? So we can see here we can do this via gRPC. And we can do this via REST, and then we have some awesome code samples. So if we want to do this in gRPC using JavaScript, right, here's some excellent examples, right? They're really, really very helpful. And let's say I sometimes work with REST because there's a little bit less work to get that set up. So I often do demos using REST and Python, right? That's kind of my go-to is for demos. So you can see you can just copy and paste this, and this is probably going to work. And then you go down here and it'll give you all kinds of different details on all these different fields and what you need to add there and what values it's going to return to you. So there's really a ton of documentation. You've got REST and gRPC. So it's all kinds of options for working with this. I don't think we're going to have time, but I will talk briefly about, where is Lightning Polar? I think I pulled it up. I'll just show you this here. I'll pull this over. So you can set up a Lightning node, test network. And we can have a couple of LND nodes. You can have these other type of nodes on here too. And you can just spin up, oops, I did that wrong. Because I did no Lightning nodes, that's a problem. Here we go. Boom, look at this beautiful UI, right? And you can spin up a whole Lightning network. And then you can come here to one of these nodes. And you can connect to it, and it'll give you all the data you need to connect to it, right? So it's all running on your local machine. It'll give you the TLS cert, the macaroon files, everything you need to talk to it. Here we go. Here's where, so you can practice playing with the APIs with this stuff, where you can just, spin up a network real quickly in Polar, get all the connection info you need. And then here we have like some examples. You can just type all this connection info into some Python scripts and then come over here and just be like, hey, I just want to get info from my node, right? And so you can have, just use some Python on your local computer. So this is just this Python scripts I have on my local machine. And this Polar network is running on my local machine too. Here you can see it's all at localhost. So very quickly and easily you can spin up a Lightning network and start playing with these APIs, which is really, really helpful because there's all kinds of different things you can do with these APIs.
We have a question from Afro Juicer. He says, thanks for the stream. I would love to hear about Aperture.
Aperture is a very, very cool program. Again, from Lightning Labs. Let's go look at it here. This is a program that allows you to use L402s, right? So these tokens you can use for buying things or for sort of gating access, or it's like a token where if you have it, you then get access to a service. And Aperture is the program that is like the security guard. So imagine you have your service that's, available on some server out on the internet. And then Aperture is like your security guard that says, hey, I'm only going to let you in the door to access this service if you can prove to me that you've bought access to it by giving me this token, this L402 token. So that's what Aperture does for you. And this is a program, the L402 protocol is what I made use of for the AI demo, right? So your AI can use L402s to go buy things on the internet for you. And what's really cool about this is it uses Lightning payments. And again, you don't have to have an account. You don't have to have a credit card. So it really kind of opens up these whole new markets when we use this type of payments mechanism. And of course, you can do micropayments too, right? You can, in the demo, I think I spent like, a fraction of a penny to, buy an inspirational quote from a service that I was running on a server that's using Aperture. Yeah.
Nice.
So
Okay,
very,
got
very
it.
useful stuff. Cool.
I have a question. So regarding the bolts and what's happening that's going to change Lightning or how it works, even like invoicing, what is happening in the space? How can you vote as a Lightning node manager and get involved? I would love to know like that side of how you can be a more active user, not just manage the node, but like find out what's happening and
get involved in the Lightning community.
Add more value and like have your voice heard as well.
Awesome. Great question. So this is, these are the Lightning bolts, right? And so we currently have like this set here, or the official bolts at the moment. The idea being is this is the protocol. So anything that wants to say it's a Lightning node.
And wait, what is wallet, a bolt so that people know? Because I know what it is, but.
It's the basis of Lightning technology right here. right? And of course, it's a fun name, but if you Google lightning bolt, you're just going to get interesting pictures of lightning strikes. You have to go Bitcoin lightning bolts to get this. But this is the protocol, right? So this is what you must have, what you must adhere to, and you must have enabled in order to have a lightning implementation, or a lightning wallet that can function with other wallets or nodes on the lightning network. So there's a lot of debate about this sort of stuff. Like recently, there's a lot of talk about Bolt 12, right, and all of that. And what is the process for what implementations are going to implement this, etc. When does this become an official Bolt?
That's for invoicing, right? Bolt 12 affects invoicing.
It has to do with offers and the structure of an invoice and how you communicate about invoices, and then there's some blinded routing stuff. There's a lot of things involved in Bolt 12, and so there's a lot of conversation about that and how should we implement it, in which is there too much stuff in the Bolt 12 spec, should we pare it down, like all these type of conversations. And if you want to be involved, and this is where we've gone from application development to protocol development. This is where we come into protocol land. This is where you get on, the Lightning forums, you get on the mailing lists, right? This is where you should really, really know the specifics of how the Lightning Network functions, HTLCs, and then you can talk about all kinds of, different things that we can change from there. If you want to go this route, you really want to have a lot of technical protocol knowledge. There's a great book which you can read for free on GitHub called Mastering the Lightning Network, which walks through a ton of this. So you can get up to speed on that, and then get on the mailing list, and just contribute things. If there's something that you want to have happen, and it's not happening, or you'd like it to happen faster, in this land, in protocol land, the best way is to go build it, right? Contribute, a pull request to a Lightning implementation that enables it, talk to people on these forums, etc. So yeah, that would be a good way to get involved there. Do we have another question?
I have one last question. Sorry. What happens with attacks? Like, I also hear that your funds can be stolen. Are there some very basic, like, safety node management 101 that you would suggest, just so that they're aware?
Yes, definitely. There's some stuff on that. I'm not sure if we can find it here. Hold on. I got to enable my JavaScript. Let's see if I can hold on. So when you run a Lightning node, this is a hot wallet. Static channel backups. There we go. Okay, cool. So when you run a Lightning node, right, this is what we call a hot wallet, because there's funds that are on a device that are connected to the internet. This brings us security concerns. So you can do things like loop out. So some nodes, what they'll do is they say, we only want this amount of money on our node, right? And when we get more than that, we're going to do a loop out, maybe make use of the loop service, do some other automation stuff, move funds off into, cold storage somewhere. Like if you have a service where people are paying you for things, so you have funds coming in, right? So one of the basic things is like, don't get too much. You got to decide how much funds, how much money you're comfortable with having on a hot wallet on the internet. Then definitely you want to set up your node properly. Right. So if you're like doing a Ubuntu server, like don't run everything as root, right? Basic sort of security stuff, have firewalls, all this type of thing. When you set up a Lightning node, you get that seed, that backup seed that you're probably very familiar with this type of thing if you have just a Bitcoin wallet on your mobile phone or using a hardware wallet. So you get that backup seed, obviously store that somewhere very secure. There's lots of guides on how to do that. But then you have the added complication with Lightning, where you have these funds that are kind of in transit all the time and in these channels. So you know how to back up with that seed that backs up your on-chain funds. What do you do about your Lightning funds? LND comes with this feature called static channel backups, right? So you can this is less thinking about theft and more thinking about a node crashing. How do you recover funds, right, in the event of that? So there's all kinds of good security features that you can use for this. If you're really going to be running a large node, right, so you have a service that's done very well. Congratulations. Now you have the problem of really managing that node well, right? You want someone who's professional at server, sysadmin stuff and security, right? To set it up for you properly, make sure things are being automatically backed up in certain places, make sure your seed is stored somewhere very secure, preferably offline, make sure you've got firewalls, all of this type of stuff. And if there are lots of people out there that have this skill set of securely running servers. So you have to determine how much money you want on there, make sure you've got a good setup, make sure you're following all of these recommendations, which are available here on docs.lightning.engineering, right? So you want to do those basic things. So I hope that answers the question. Do we have any others?
Let's check. Yeah, I remember Carla Kirk-Coing saying that her boyfriend disconnected her node to play some sort of gaming device, and she was like, "God damn it! Do I break up with him or?"
Let's be nice to Carla's boyfriend, because I saw her in Atlanta, and she was joking. Every time someone meets him, she's like, "You're the guy that unplugged Carla's node." So it was an error.
The static channel backup, huh?
Right, absolutely. But Carla knows what she's doing. I'm sure she had the appropriate stuff, and she was able to recover.
That was like,
but you never know. It could be a non-technical boyfriend or girlfriend that just unplugs something, and there you go. So
or you live in a different country and light goes out all the time. So
we have here in Puerto Rico, the electricity goes out. We could do, like, if we were going to run a node in the house, I would have like a battery backup on it. You just got to be aware of what's the threats for your particular situation, including a spouse or partner who does not understand Lightning nodes. Yeah.
Okay, we have one last question here before you go. What are the benefits of running your own node and hosting it on Linode or DigitalOcean?
Okay, so the benefit is you get a lot more options. You get a lot more control, right? So I am, very much
your node means like your own machine, right? And
yeah, or the
those
software,
cost $800 or $70. Like what does a node cost for your own node?
So if you're going to get like Umbrel or something and like buy like Raspberry Blitz or Umbrel or one of these things, I actually don't know what they cost at the moment because I haven't had one in a few years. But you could absolutely buy one and run it in your own home. And that would be fun. Again, I'm not going to do that at the moment here in Puerto Rico because I don't have the battery backup and the electricity could go out. And then I wouldn't necessarily lose funds or anything, but like it would be uptime is really important for running a good node. So I use Linode, right? And for me, the advantage of that is because I'm a tech nerd and I'm playing with this tech all the time. And so to kind of be able to have it up on a server like that and I can go log in on my computer. You could do that with an Umbrel too, but I like to play with it on the command line and try new things. And when you're setting it up, when I'm setting it up myself on a Ubuntu server, I really have full control of it. So it's kind of like the usability versus customization and control, right? Which one do you want? What's appropriate for you at that point in time? And then
Wait, Hannah, what does play with it mean for you?
Fun stuff. Like, I'm going to try, auto fees, via loop in terminal, right? So I'm just going to, go enable that feature, look at what my node's doing, come back tomorrow, see how it's doing. How are the auto fees working for me? Just enabling different features. Trying to, find like different scripts that you could run to automate things, fun stuff like that. Yeah.
Got it. Well, thank you, Hannah, for such an incredible presentation. If at some point you can also share some of those links that you already have, we can also share the presentation. And so we really appreciate having you here and giving us the 101 for all the Bold Fun Legends of Lightning participants. As I said, there's more than 30 projects up going on. So I hope that you can go check them out and get some feedback if you see any that are particularly interesting or you think they're stuck. It'd be awesome if you can just take a look. I know they would be incredibly helpful and grateful. They are already.
I love to. I would love to. And of course, this is what I do for a living. This is my job. So you all are welcome to find me and chat with me. And I do hang out on the Bolt.fun forums and whatnot on occasion, so I can see what's going on there as well. So, yep, I hope we get a chance to talk. It's cool stuff.
Thank you